Good day. My name is Bojina Dignum. I'm a professor of responsible AI at Umeå University in Sweden. And today I will be talking to you about responsible artificial intelligence. What is it, why we care, and what can be done about it? Of course, to start talking about responsibility in artificial intelligence, we need to start to understand what is AI, and in particular, what is AI when we are speaking about the responsibility and the governance of AI systems in society. Many associate AI with technology, a type of methods and computational solutions to address several problems. AI can be also be seen as a field of science, and the field of science which tries to understand what is intelligence, what is human intelligence, by developing and testing computational models of intelligence. But also, if we look at what the media and many policymakers try to make us believe, AI is being seen as some kind of magic, some kind of systems which we don't really understand, we don't really know how they work, but they are doing all kinds of things in our behalf and affecting our lives in many different ways without we potentially having much way to control and to work with them. What is important from my perspective and from the perspective of regulating, of addressing the responsibility for the design and the development of these systems, is that whatever we think the AI system is, we cannot separate the AI system from the ecosystem, the societal ecosystem in which it is developed and used. So AI in itself, the software in itself, is not the focus of responsible AI, but we really need to look at the organizations, the people, the institutions that exist and make AI systems existing possible. It is also important to realize that there is not technology fix for all the potential problems associated with AI. So we cannot fix everything by improving the technology. We really need to address the social aspects and the organizational aspects around AI systems. It is important to realize that AI is, in its core, it's a very simple type of technology. It will develop a set of rules, and it acts based on a set of rules, and these rules are often designed or derived from the analysis of a huge quantity of data. So we look at a huge quantity, or we let the system analyze a huge quantity of images of cats, for instance, and the system will identify some patterns between these pictures. Then it uses these patterns as the rules to decide whether or not another picture that it hasn't seen before does show a cat or not. The interesting thing is that these rules, these patterns that the system identify, are often not at all the same type of patterns that we would identify. It is also important to realize that AI systems don't exist by themselves. They exist by the design, by the purpose that we give them. So it is extremely important for us to really understand what is that purpose. And to design these systems, we are dependent on many, many people. It's people who have to first tag or describe which pictures contain cats, which pictures don't contain cats, as a base for the learning that the system is going to do. This type of independent or dependence on the work of people, it is generating quite some problems, and it is increasingly a problem because it really is been shown to derive in situations of exploitation and power imbalance. It is also important to realize that whatever we design in AI is intrinsically linked to these power structures. It uses our resources, it uses our planet, it uses our work, it reflects our biases and our beliefs. So we really need to be very aware of what are we doing when we use an AI system. AI is not intelligent, like I say. It will identify these patterns on images or on other types of data, but really doesn't understand what that data means, what those concepts are. So it can identify cats in pictures, but it still will have not an idea, at least not like we have, of what it means, what a cat means. So it is difficult to really go behind this pattern identification, these rules based on the patterns. For these rules, we do need a lot of data, and moreover, it is very easy to trick the systems into believe things which are not there. So if we turn around the image of the school bus in these photos, right away the system will get confused and will start trying to identify other patterns in these pictures. More difficulty, or more problematic even, is when the physical environment which the system is trying to analyze is altered for whatever reason, like the stickers on that stop sign. Then the system will also completely get confused and try to identify other types of patterns in that signal, and with the consequences that it might interpret that signal in a completely different way, in a completely inappropriate way. So we really need to understand this lack of understanding that the AI systems have, and the very contextualized a field of operation that the system can really operate. The moment the system is out of that field in which it has been trained, then things can go very, very wrong. And this means that all this, and we know it, developers of AI, people, policymakers and users of AI increasingly know that it's problematic to deal with this pure learning from data. It leads to bias and discrimination, depending on the types of data that we include or not in the training. The examples that we give the system to learn from, it can very easily lead to issues of bias and discrimination, not because someone is purposefully trying to create bias or to discriminate, but because the way we select this data sets, the way that the data is collected, the way that the types of data that is given for the system to learn from are not carefully enough considered, and often don't represent the whole population which we would like the system to address in its decision capacities. It is, like I say, very easy to trick the system into believe all kinds of things, and to change and to identify patterns where we wouldn't see a pattern, and to quickly get lost in its decision capabilities if things are slightly changed. And sometimes it's so small, the changes, that we would not be able to see a difference between these two, the pictures in the top and the pictures in the bottom, only differ from by a couple of pixels, but still leads to a completely different type of interpretation by the system. And like I said, this misinterpretation might lead to serious problems in the decision making of the system. It is also so that we, unfortunately, are not, in many cases, structured enough in the types of engineering models that are used to design these systems, and there is a difficulty to reproduce or to create a structured way to address and to design and to maintain this system. So that's also, from an engineering perspective, an issue that needs to take into account. And of course, there are many fallacies that lay to the issue of learning from data. For instance, it believe that if a lot of people think in a certain way, then that the way people think about must be true. And of course, people might believe all kinds of things, and that's not necessarily true. And even if a lot of people believe the same thing, it not necessarily is relevant for the decision that the system needs to take. So we know all of this, and this is known by the developer, by the designers, by the ones which are operating these systems. And if we still decide to use the AI for many situations, we are responsible, of course, for the problematic or less desirable results of what using these systems mean. So there are an increasingly number of concerns around the use of AI. The issue of datification, all these reliance on data and reliance on the idea that if we have data, then it is a problem that deserves to be solved. It's problematic in the sense that we all know that data is only a representation of society. We and our societies and our lives and our world is more than the data that we can collect about it. And it is also important to realize that data is not a ground material. It's not an existing resource. It's something which is constructed and is constructed by people for a specific purpose and with a specific type of assumptions. When we start using data which was collected for a specific situation in other situations to train systems to other ways, then many problems might arise. Moreover, data is by definition historical. We only can have data about the past. We cannot have data about the future. And by the nature of the way that we construct data, that we collect data, it's always necessarily biased. We cannot really collect all information possible, so there are always some decisions on what is important to be collected, what is important to be kept, and what is not, and that leads necessarily to bias. So the issues often is not so much about unbiasing the data, but realizing that data is biased and that therefore we need to take the results of the systems in a different way. It is also important to realize the balance, the power balances or power imbalances in the way that AI is being developed. Who is developing AI has, for a large part, influence, a very strong influence in what type of AI systems and AI applications are being developed. What are the motivations of those to use AI, and who is deciding whether or not to use AI is really influencing the type of systems and the capability and the focus of the systems. In many cases, there is not enough of a democratic accountability in this type of decisions because they are done outside of the democratic process. And one issue which is really also increasingly important to consider is the cost of developing AI. AI as a computational system relies heavily on computational resources. These computational resources are huge users of energy resources and also use natural resources to be built, the materials that we need to build the computers, the data centers and the servers that are needed. So this environmental impact of AI, the cost, how much costs AI to be developed, is something which we do need to take into account. And also not only let's say the physical costs of AI, but also the costs of AI in terms of societal and human sustainability. So responsible AI is about the issue that we realize that AI can potentially do a lot good, realizing that there are all these concerns and problems with the use of the techniques and methods that we have currently at our disposal. So the main question, the question zero in many cases is, should we use AI for this specific situation? Who is going to decide about this? Which kind of values are going to be considered, and who holds these values? How those values are interpreted are at the core of the issues that we want to address with responsible AI. How do we deal with dilemmas? How do these values are prioritized? How you ensure that those that are concerning the results of the systems are also included and participate in the decision making? Those are all issues that are related to responsible AI. Responsible AI, of course, has a lot to do with the ethical impact of AI. So how AI is operating in a world in which decisions that we take might be considered or have a good or bad effect in society. Those are issues that really need to be addressed. So ethics is not just about it's not about the answer. There is not the only and unique ethical answer in all situations and in all contexts, but it's about really recognizing that AI might have an ethical impact. Ethics is not so much the solution, but more a social process, a process through which we understand and we reason and we participate in the discussion about what are the issues and how do we want AI systems to deal with daily issues in our lives. It is not about having systems that have the correct answer in all situations, but it's about the dilemmas about how are we going to deal with increasing accuracy and the increasing costs that come with this accuracy. It's about also deciding what type of models and how much do we invest on developing models to address some of the ethical concerns, but possibly in a trade-off with other types of values. So how do we trade off, how we decide, how we balance between security and privacy, between equity and equality, between long-term and short-term effects, between effects, benefits for the individuals or benefits for society. These are the ethical questions that are at the core of the responsible development and use of AI. So responsible AI is not an impediment for innovation, but it's, if anything, is a stepping stone for innovation. If we define which direction, which type of values and what type of trade-offs are important in a specific situation, and indicating that to those that are developing systems, that are moving technology forward, really is a way to support the building of a technology that addresses all what we can do today, but also addresses the existing problems. And by doing so, by providing responsibility, by providing ethical direction to how AI should be developed, we are ensuring not only public acceptance, but also really a drive for transformation, a drive for business and for new forms of innovation, which are better aligned with the principles, the societal principles and human rights requirements. So there is a lot being done on this, and there are many, many organizations in the world, from the United Nations, UNESCO, to the European Union, to many, many other individual countries and associations in the world, which are really coming forward with many different recommendations or principles or guidelines in terms of what kind of principles should drive the development and use of AI. All of those are about taking into account legal concerns. Of course, any system that is developed should be within the cadre of the frame of the law, but also taking into account ethical principles of fairness, of responsibility, of accountability, of non-discrimination, alignment with all types of human rights and societal requirements, ensuring that the systems that are developed are reliable, technically correct and robust, and that we can verify in many different ways, both formally, but and as well as societally, that the systems are indeed doing, and there is some accountability for how the systems are being developed. So all these principles are quite abstract in terms of high-level description of these principles. It's easy to say that we want, for instance, a system to be fair, to ensure just answers to all different types of groups. But it is, of course, much more difficult to understand how are we interpreting this issue of fairness, and how is fairness going to be at the end implemented into the computational systems that are being developed. So there are a lot of work as well, so not only at the level of the development of the principles, but also how can we move these principles, how can we operationalize these principles in more effective ways. The European Union, for instance, is working on regulation, really developing legal framework which will indicate what type of AI systems, what type of situations can AI be, and how should AI be designed for instance, high-risk types of environments. This regulation is at this moment being developed and decided at the European Parliament, and it's expected to come into place in a couple of years. Takes a human-centered approach, and it really looks at a risk, the perceived risk of not only the technology being used, but also the domain, the sector in which the systems are being developed. Another approach to operationalize these principles is standards, developing standards which will support organizations to provide the due diligence and limit their liability, but at the same time provide better integration between different products and services, and in ensuring that all types of systems have a minimum level of quality as defined by the standards. Many organizations in the world, especially large companies and large associations, are coming forward with internal measures to set and monitor their own internal guidelines. Advisory boards, ethics officers, and so on are ways that companies and organizations are setting for themselves to really adhere and define and adhere to what type of values and principles are relevant and are part of their own individual mission. Another way to going forward in this direction is the development of assessment tools to determine the trustworthiness of a specific system, which really also allows to assess the maturity of different systems and also supports organizations moving forward to more mature approaches to the systems that they have. But of course, nothing of this can be done without bigger effort in education and training, which will allow for a better awareness of the general population and allow for the participation of citizens and consumers in all these type of discussions. So we take responsibility for AI in many different ways. We do it by, of course, looking at the behavior of the systems, the results that come out of the systems. But this in itself is not really enough. The ethics or the responsibility by design is not enough if we don't really take also into account the process through which the systems are developed. How are the decisions made? How are the assumptions taken? What kind of, who is participating in the discussion? What kind of options were there available, and how were the choices made? All of that influence at the end what kind of systems are being developed, and therefore what type of responsibility and ethical behavior these systems will have. And this, of course, is based on the responsibility of all of us, stakeholders in this process, on how do we ourselves, each one of us, takes our own responsibility for the kind of participation that we have in this process. Because at the end of the day, all design is political. We have, as well as we design societal systems like democratic process, we also design AI systems. All these systems might have or not the desired positive effect that we expect, but all of them are based on choices and on decisions that are taken in terms of how we formulate the choices, which are the choices available for discussion, how much are those participated and those informed about the possibilities, what is the legitimacy of those developing the systems, what is the involvement of all different stakeholders, and how are we going to aggregate in the many different opinions, the many different perceptions, and the many different interpretations of all these stakeholders. So in this, AI is not different from any other complex system in the world, and we really need to look at this type of questions, not only from the perspective of the engineer, how can we build it, but from the perspective, from a multidisciplinary perspective, which really enables looking at these questions from a much broader societal and humane perspective. Thank you very much.